Yeah, this one's a little random, but sometimes you just gotta talk about a movie you like. Clue, the movie. Now, Clue came out in 1985 and is, of course, based off of the board game Clue, you know, the classic Parker's Brothers game. And this movie, written partially by John Landis of American Werewolf in London fame and Animal House, is a comedy take on Clue, but is also a pretty entertaining, just mystery movie in general. Sure, it's got kind of a tongue-in-cheek sense of humor about it, and it's not to be taken too seriously, but part of the fun of this movie is actually trying to figure out who killed Mr. Boddy, who killed all the other things, how could these crazy murders be happening as we're following around these guys throughout the whole movie. And this movie, more than any other movie that I can think of off the top of my head, has such rewatchability because the movie is constantly doing this sleight of hand with you, directing you one way when something's happening off screen, and you gotta be looking for, okay, who's not in this scene that could have gone and killed the other person. And then when the movie ends, which I'll talk about the ending at the end, or endings, it just calls everything back into question. What did you miss? What did you not pick up on? So in that sense, you're going to want to rewatch it again and again to pick up on all those things you missed the first time or second time or third time. But what is the premise of Clue? Well, it's the same as the board game. If you ever played the board game, you know you got all these suspects, all these various colorful characters, and there's been a murder, and now you got to figure out, okay, who did it, in what room was it done, and with what weapon was it done. And because this is a movie, the room and the weapon are pretty obvious because you see, okay, the cook died in the kitchen with a knife in her back. This cop that showed up about halfway died in the library with a lead pipe to the head. So you kind of see that much. But the real question in this movie is, who did it? It's like an Agatha Christie Murder on the Orient Express style, which is not the first time that'll come up, because this movie does borrow a lot from that Agatha Christie style, and I think it works for the movie's benefit, because who doesn't love a good whodunit mystery? Because it'll keep you invested until the end of the movie to try to figure out, okay, who did it? But in this movie, the setup is actually pretty simple. You have all these people that you recognize, Colonel Mustard, Miss Scarlet, Professor Plum, and so on. They all arrive at this real creepy looking mansion that looks like it's straight out of the Munsters. And you've got Tim Curry as the butler, and he is what really is the glue that holds this movie together. I'll talk about the cast, but Tim Curry sells this movie 100%. He's the butler, he's Wadsworth, he's in almost every scene, and he is just such a ball of hilarious energy. Every weird Tim Curry-ism that you've come to love from the man over the years are present here, and I don't know how much of that was improvised, I don't know, but it just makes me laugh every time. But anyway, everybody shows up and they're all using their aliases, right? Professor Plum and Colonel Mustard are not their real names, these are fake names, think like Reservoir Dogs, but with a lot less blood. And they discover that they're all being blackmailed by Mr. Boddy. And he's the man that shows up late, and he's the one blackmailing them. He gives each of them a weapon to kill Wadsworth, but then when the lights go down, something happens, we don't really know what happens, and we see Mr. Boddy dead on the ground. And the whole rest of the movie is trying to figure out, alright, who killed Mr. Boddy before the police arrive. But as they're trying to figure that out, all these other bodies start piling up. The cook dies, the maid dies, there's a motorist that comes in that had a flat tire, he dies. And what has to be one of my favorite mean-spirited jokes in this movie is there's this random singing telegram girl that shows up, and before she even finishes her little jingle, bam, she's dead. But aside from all these other bodies piling up, what really hooks the audience and hooks all the characters involved is that all these seemingly random people that show up, the cop, the singing telegram girl, the maid, the cook, all these kind of unrelated people all have connections with at least one of the guests that were invited. So now there's a deeper conspiracy going on. Who's inviting all these people? What's going on? And in probably the best twist of the movie, and I am gonna kind of spoil it somewhat, although this is a movie where even if you know who killed it, you don't really know because of the genius of the ending. And I'm gonna call it genius. Some people, this might not work for you. Some people just want a clean cut finale ending, but I love this movie's ending because there's multiple endings. There's 3 different endings in this movie, and when it came out in theaters, you didn't know which ending you were gonna get. So in that sense, you didn't know if the movie that you saw was the same as the movie your friends saw the night before, because it always rotated these 3 different endings. And if you want to get people coming back to the theater multiple times to see the same movie, that's how you do it. And it is kind of in the spirit of the Clue game, because every time you play Clue, there's a different outcome. So it would make sense that every time you watch the movie, you get a different outcome too. And it kind of makes the movie more of a game. There's that audience participation in it. Even if you've already seen the movie once, you're still trying to figure out, okay, which ending are we getting this time around? You're trying to put your own pieces together, trying to see how it works. And what's really cool is that with the DVD release, at least the version that I got that I just rewatched, you have two different options when you watch the movie. You can either watch it as it was released theatrically with a random pick of one of the three endings. So every time you watch it, you just get another random ending. So you don't really know what you're gonna get. Or you could get it the way it was done in screeners, and I think it's the way it's done on streaming now too, because the first time I saw this, it was on streaming, and I got the other option, which is all three endings. And that is kind of fun in itself because of the way it's presented. You see it play out as a regular movie. You see the first ending, and then you get this very old-timey title card that's almost like from a silent movie. And it says, well, this is how it could have happened, but this is also how it could have happened. Then it plays the second ending and those string of events that lead to the finale. And then again, it goes, yeah, but still, this is how it could have happened also. And then you get your third ending. And then the movie actually ends. And maybe in refreshing my memory, I should have gone with that ending so I could give you a more full review of all three different endings. But for me, I wanted the fun of the theatrical experience. I'd never seen that before. So I picked the random ending, and the ending that I got is the ending where Mr. Green is a plant from the FBI and he kills Wadsworth, who's actually Mr. Boddy. It's this big conspiracy. The police rush in and everyone gets arrested because everybody's guilty. Everyone killed a different person at a different time. But as for Mr. Boddy, it was Mr. Green in the hall with the revolver. And for me, having seen all three endings, that one has to be my favorite ending because it is just such a satisfying wrap up to everything. It all kind of wraps up in such a neat little bow that doesn't contradict anything early on in the movie. Some of the other endings I think of as a little bit more far-fetched, that they're almost trying to squeeze a square peg in a round hole with some of the facts. But for some reason, this Mr. Green one all makes sense. And on top of that, it ends with a great closing line because Mr. Green throughout the whole movie is presented as a homosexual, and that's his big secret. That's what he's getting blackmailed with. So throughout the movie, there are these little homophobic jabs at him, trying to ostracize him, make fun of him throughout the whole movie. And some of them are funny, some of them are a little forced. But with this ending, the final line is, "I'm gonna go home and sleep with my wife." He smiles and it fades to black. That's the end of the movie. And I don't really know why that last line always got a laugh out of me, but maybe it's because it was just another thing that they didn't really have to wrap up in a bow that they kind of did. That, okay, he's a plant from the CIA, he's not really gay, that was all just his cover story. And it almost retroactively makes all those jokes that maybe felt a little forced funny again, because now you know it's all just a cover and he's just playing along with it. But Tim Curry as Wadsworth isn't the only fantastic casting choice in this movie. You have Christopher Lloyd as Professor Plum, you have Madeline Kahn as Mrs. White, you have Leslie Ann Warren as Miss Scarlet, and you have tons and tons of great character actors. They're not really leading men and women actors. Most of these people don't headline their own movies. Sure, they're kind of big names, but they all usually play supporting roles or love interest or secondary characters that really adopt the mannerisms and eccentricities of whatever character they're playing, and that works in spades here because every character is super memorable. By the end of the movie, you know all of these characters, and with a cast this big, you kind of have to do that. But on top of that, they're all stage actors. All these actors are stage trained. They all have experience on the stage, and a lot of this movie plays out like a murder mystery stage play almost, where there's a lot of double talk, fast talking, double entendre, different jabs and jokes that just kind of fly by. You barely even notice it, but they're really funny. And most of it isn't even the joke itself. It's the delivery and the rapidity of which they're going back and forth with these jokes. And the only other movie I can compare the dialogue and jokes to is this other movie that's also kind of a stage play feel, and it's called Noises Off. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen this movie. It is hilarious. Maybe I'll do a video on it someday. It's a great comedy about the shenanigans that go on behind the scenes when you're trying to put on a play, a performance. It's fantastic, and it has a very similar comedic style to this movie. And I just thought it was so refreshing because even though there's a lot of talking in this movie, it's all very good dialogue. It's very quippy, it's very funny, and even if you just got kind of one ear out, you'll still catch a lot of the humor in this movie. But as great as this movie is, there is one thing that always bothered me about it, and maybe this is just silly or nitpicky, but I could never get behind the decision to not dress all these characters in their signature colors. Colonel Mustard's wearing brown, Mrs. Peacock's wearing orange, Miss Scarlet's wearing green, and Mr. Green is wearing, you guessed it, blue. Why is this the case? I have no good idea, but it doesn't really hurt the movie because the characters and the actors playing them are so memorable and they embody those characters perfectly, even though they're not dressed like the characters. So maybe that was a tactical decision on the part of the wardrobe to not dress them in their appropriate colors. But I don't know, I feel like they really missed out on giving these characters their signature colors, because this movie also has a very tongue-in-cheek sense of humor. It doesn't take itself too seriously. There's a lot of homages to the games. Heck, they even bring in the secret passages that were in the game. So you know that this movie is actively trying to adapt the game with all the weirdness and quirks, but somehow making it funny and enjoyable along the way. It never really feels forced. You just accept that, yeah, this is the movie version of the game, which if you're watching a movie called Clue, the movie, you kind of know what to expect. So I don't think it would have been overkill or too much or too goofy to have them actually dress in their appropriate colors. I just think that that would just added to the clueness of the whole movie that it's trying to go for. But I don't know, it doesn't ruin the movie for me, but it is just that one little thing that I wish they had done to just lock this movie in as the definitive Clue movie adaptation, because I feel like this is a movie that could be remade, it could be reinterpreted. I'm pretty sure that did happen with Reservoir Dogs. They all got their different colors and stuff, so you could say that that's a different version of Clue. But for what this is a very funny, very engaging, and very clever take on the board game as adapted into a movie. There's a lot of good stuff here, but now I turn it over to you guys. What do you think about Clue, the movie? Whatever you think, let me know in the comments, and if you like this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more content, and hit the notification bell to be notified every time I upload a video. And as always, I'm Colby, this is my nerdy talk, and I'll see you in the next video.